Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we're going to discuss and learn about the PRS Silver Sky Nebula. This is the signature guitar of John Mayer. If you're not familiar with his work, you are. Don't worry, you've heard his songs. He was really big in the 2000s. I remember growing up and hearing his stuff on like the pop radio stations all the time. He's kind of one of those guys that the ladies are always after. But to be honest, his top hits never really super jived with me. So when I hear people like Tyler Larson from the Music Is Win channel, all of a sudden talking up John Mayer here, 10, 15 years later, it's like, what? What? Am I missing something about John Mayer here? Yes, apparently I was. He actually went to Berkeley for a little bit, and he's played with the greats like B.B. King and Eric Clapton. He's actually quite the phenomenal guitar player. So even if you don't like his big top hits, definitely go check him out. He's got some great playing blues style licks, and while he's very famous for the song Your Body is a Wonderland, you're gonna be saying Your Body is Another Brand on his signature guitar. So he's kind of known for Stratocasters, and apparently he and Fender got in a little bit of a kerfuffle, and there's two theories behind that. It was either Fender wanted him to only use their guitars and amps on stage, he could use a Martin acoustic and still use his Dumble if he wanted to, but those are the things that had to be shown. But his official press release was he wanted to take the Stratocaster and further it, and he didn't feel Fender was the best place to do that. So when a guy that can completely fill stadiums is looking for a new manufacturer for his signature guitars, of course he had tons of offers on the table. Everyone was sending him stuff. But he eventually settled with Paul at PRS because he liked him. He was a freak like him. Meaning Paul knows how to make a great guitar and he's extremely passionate about it. And Mayer is extremely passionate about playing guitar. And he likes PRS guitars for the same reason that I have a big respect for him. The original creator, the owner of the whole company, is still with us. That's like talking to Orville Gibson or Leo Fender about designing your guitar. And if you haven't checked out PRS's videos on their YouTube channel, I highly suggest it. It's fun watching him go through the archives of his original instruments. But Mayer and Paul were really kind of scared to release this thing out to the public because it's either people are going to love it or it's going to be a bad thing. And yeah, it was a super controversial model, but now that it's been out for a couple of years, most people enjoy these. I think it's because a lot of YouTubers have picked them up and said that they're so nice. But let's go a little bit into the history of designing this. So apparently it took them about 2.5 years to get things right. And you can first see John sporting this in spring of 2017. He's playing a prototype on stage. But by March of 2018, they had released their first batch of these. The first 500 had special hard shell cases, and everything after that has always came in a deluxe gig bag. And he basically designed these guitars after his 63 and 64 Stratocaster. So obviously this is very Stratocaster influenced, but just how similar is it to a Stratocaster? Let's find out. Now, if I remember correctly, this is like a 58 reissue Stratocaster, so I mean, not exactly the same thing here. But the body has been changed up a little bit. It almost looks like the fin contour here. It's not quite as large, but very similar. This gets a very distinct PRS cut right here. It's just that swoop in instead of like this bulbous horn right here. As far as your controls, they're looking very similar. But take a look at your output jack. This one actually has a domed top to it. A little bit more on that later, whereas this guy's flat. Moving on to the back, there's no trem cover over them. And the necks are constructed a little bit differently. Both maple, but these guys get the skunk stripe. And the PRSs are actually not a one-piece neck. They use some sort of a scarf joint right there. And obviously, our headstock is a little bit different. The PRS uses a reverse PRS style headstock, but still maintains that natural color. But all in all, yes, the body styles are very similar. They didn't just change it up a little bit to avoid copyright. Fender does not own the Stratocaster body shape, unfortunately. But yes, it is a bolt-on PRS guitar. The initial 2018 run was offered in 4 colors. They were based off of Tesla colors. Because Mayer looked at all the old guitars and said, those are kind of based off of old world things and cars. So he wanted these to be modified after something new because he's trying to reinvent the Stratocaster and make it better. So they came up with Onyx, Frost, Horizon, and Tungsten. But then the following year in 2019, they introduced Dodge 'em Blue, Golden Mesa, Mock Sand, and Orion Green. So 2018 is when I started to pay attention to brand new guitars. And that Orion Green was the first one that said, okay, I kind of like that one, I want to check it out. That never ended up happening for me, but during the 2020 NAMM show, they introduced maple fretboards. And one of those was the green one. So I was all on board for documenting that one this year. But then Nebula happened. So Nebula caught the world by storm at the 2020 NAMM show. This was a limited edition finish, and it's a flip-flop finish. It goes from a purplish hue right here to this bluish hue. It's honestly nothing new, but people lost their minds over this. I mean, Gibson's done flip-flop studios back in the early 2000s. Fender's toyed with it off and on, but we haven't seen it lately in like the major manufacturers, so I think that's why a lot of people fell in love with this. And when we talk fall in love with, every single pre-order for the 500 was sold out within about 24 hours. When I first saw that YouTube video of these, I contacted my musician's friend rep and said, yes, I want one. So by the time I got my price back, unfortunately, they were all sold out. Apparently, I was the first one to be denied. So unfortunately, I had to pay a scalper to get this one. So a regular Silver Sky is $2,299. This limited edition finish was $2,599, but now we live in a scalper's market. These sell for more than they did brand new. But I just wanted to document this finish, so I went ahead and bought one. So in the scalper's market, you're looking to pay between $4,000 and $5,000 today. They've sold for as much as $6,000 and $7,000, but once people realized people were paying crazy prices for it, the market's kind of flooded with these right now. So I really think the average value for these things over the years will sit around that $3,500 to $4,500. It really just depends on how many are on the market at once, because it's a highly desirable finish. People love this and they're really going for it. And I think if you're going for a PRS Silver Sky, you kind of want something to stand out and be a little bit different. Whew, that was a long history, but now it's here on YouTube forever. So what are my first impressions of this? It's kind of nice. I've had some experience with Stratocasters now, so I can, appreciate this a little bit more. The very first thing, besides the finish, yes, the finish is cool. It does the whole flip-floppy thing. I think we get that now. But picking this up, instantly, it's the neck. This is like no Fender I've ever touched. If anything, it reminds me of like a really full 59 Gibson neck. The edges of the fretboard feel nice and rolled to me. This just feels like such a massive neck. I've never felt a Stratocaster that has anything similar here. And on top of that, I'm not sure if all of the production models have this. I don't think so. This one has really nice flamed figuring within the neck, so I think I lucked out on that one. I'm still disappointed about the whole gig bag situation. I was so disappointed, I just went ahead and bought a hard shell case for this one. But overall, I was definitely impressed with this thing. It might look like a Stratocaster, but now that I've had one, it's definitely not a Stratocaster. It feels very similar, but it plays completely differently. A few negatives though, I feel like these knobs feel really cheap. They turn too easily. Maybe that's a premium feature somehow, but this doesn't even sound quality. Listen to it. It just kind of sounds hollow. But I like this little swoop right here. That's always interesting. And once again, that domed output jack. That was the first thing that caught my eye. So to learn a little bit more about the Silver Sky, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench and take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside the PRS Silver Sky. I doubt you've seen this anywhere else on the internet. I think this is actually the first time I've torn apart a PRS guitar. I was a little bit surprised what I found under here. Just complete bare body. Fender always shields all this stuff off. I'm sure there's probably a reason why they don't need to. But let's take a look at some of these marks. The first one, it's kind of exciting. I was hoping we would be able to find one way to figure out what number it is out of 500, but unfortunately no. But then it was really cool to me to see this little rubber stamper, February 18, 2020. That's like the exact same font that you'll find in some vintage Gibsons. It looks like something says KG. That's probably like a quality control sign off. Looks like we got a couple other signatures right there. And there is a very small additional route right there to accommodate for something. Then down here, very similar to Fender, they have a little identification barcode right there. That also has a matching serial number and tells you what it is. And there's something stuck to the side there as well, so there's just a bunch of identification marks here. And at the end of the neck, you can see it has some other stuff. I'm not going to bother taking the neck off on this guy though. But here's what the backside of the pickups look like. It looks like we have some sort of copper shielding tape around them. Then this middle one is colored over red for some reason. But if you want to know what model these are, you just have to look on the outside pickup cover. It tells you right there. This is loaded with the PRS 635JM pickups. They're single coils. They're meant to not get, you know, super bright. They're more for that mid-range is what I've been getting the gist of online. So I'll have to see how that sounds in my hands. May or makes it sound pretty good. But it's just a pretty standard looking 5-way switch right here with a master volume and 2 tone controls. So this one controls your neck and middle, and your bridge is controlled by a single one right there. And just a quick look at the knobs. Again, I'm not real happy with these. They feel rather cheap. These would feel better if it had some sort of a rubber gripper on the edges, but just the way they are, they feel hollow. But the switch tip is something I kind of like. It's a really flat surface right there. For whatever reason, it reminds me of the cutaway that they've got going on there. Just a very flat shape, so I actually kind of like that feature. That's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all your standard Stratocaster style positions. And then the tremolo setup is kind of interesting on this. So normally PRS tremolos are set up as floating, but this one comes from the factory as down only. They even give you a little card in the gig bag saying that's the way it's supposed to be. You can change it and set it up if you go to blah 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 and set it up that way. So this is set from the factory. It's just flush, and that's kind of the way I like it anyways. But it's just using like a vintage saddle-like system. And here's what your bar looks like. Very similar, but what's interesting is it doesn't actually like screw in, it doesn't pop in. They just use some sort of like a rubber securing system where it's just tight enough that you put it in however you want to put it in. It just kind of naturally secures itself in place. And then I kept talking about this domed output jack. Taking this thing off kind of threw me for a loop. Look at that. They actually route a little bit out of the body and have these little notches on the bottom. That probably makes them a lot easier to install so they're never crooked. But apparently they do this to make it easier to plug in. I honestly don't understand that marketing. I think it's more so just the aesthetics of it kind of being like that new car vibe. But everything on 10, the neck pickup reads 6.22 k ohms. These two, we're looking at 3.14-ish. Just the middle, 6.22. Probably going to be about the same. Yep, 3.15, and then just your bridge, 6.24. But the spec sheet calls this an alder body. If you remember correctly, you can see through to the wood back in there. But we've just kind of got typical Stratocaster stuff back here. Maple neck with a rosewood fretboard. So while everything else has kind of been slightly modernized on this thing, they left the fretboard very vintagey. Kind of to my dismay, honestly. If it wasn't for the limited edition finish, I probably wouldn't have even given this a try. So this stuck with that very vintage 7.25-inch radius. For whatever reason, I haven't had good luck on Strats that have this radius, so I'll have to give this one a try. And we've got 22 frets, and they use the PRS style small birds. So it looks like a hummingbird right there, some sort of a hawk or eagle. I think, is that one an owl? I think there's an owl somewhere. There's a little hummingbird. As far as the neck, we get a 1.66-inch nut width. That increases to 2.06 by the 12th. First fret neck depth, 0.92. That's chunky. And this ought to be good. What's it by the 12th? 0.1. This is just a super rounded neck. And this rocks a real bone nut. So moving on to the headstock. You can see where they route out the truss rod cavity right there, and they have to cap it with a different piece of wood. But this is a dual action truss rod. And they just kind of have this little dog tag thing that sits over top of that for when you're not using it. Kind of cleans up the look at the face of the headstock. And this is actually the reverse of what you normally find on a Paul Reed Smith guitar. Usually the big point is on this side. But you're going to notice that these tuners from the factory are actually locking tuners. So you can unlock them by taking a coin or whatever you have to do that, and then you just string them up like any type of locking tuner. But what I found increasingly interesting and caught me off guard is I always assumed these were metal tips. They're not. They're plastic. And I go, who uses plastic on tuner tips? And then I go, oh, Kluson does. So I don't know why gray plastic just kind of threw me off, but I kind of like the feel because it's not cold. It doesn't show fingerprints like the metal ones. That's kind of an interesting thing that I didn't think I would like, but I've kind of warmed up to the idea now. And before we switch to the back, we might as well take a second just to really appreciate this finish. It's a lot easier to see this whole flip-flop effect here on the workbench. I'm not sure if those flip-flop studios did as good of a job because Paul Reed Smith was really like pumping this thing up at NAMM. It's very possible that they really made this finish a lot better than those other iterations, but I've not seen one in person, so I can't really judge. I just know this is definitely unique, and I'm sure they'll experiment with some more colors like this in the future. Now let's go ahead and flip this over. That's a good shot of the cutaway right there. That's kind of hard to see sometimes. Back here, same stuff, but you're going to notice, again, we do not have any type of tremolo thing back here. It's just completely open. But notice how big of a space there is right here. 4 springs stock from the factory, a decent sized block. I don't really know what I'm talking about when it comes to stuff like this, so I'll just let you guys see that and go from there. But it certainly is interesting to see those screws come through to the back right there. I wonder if that is intentional by design for a special reason. Kind of interesting, but other than that, it's just, regular Stratocaster back here. You've got your big old comfort carve. It looks like instead of, starting here and ending here, they've moved it up a little bit. But as far as the rest of the guitar, I'm not seeing anything that's changed except for the color flip-flop in here. But this is such a massive disappointment since we didn't find any special marking inside of the guitar. It just says limited edition 1 of 500. It should have been 1 of 500, 6 of 500, because that's just so much fun to do the collectible nature of these things when you can actually find number 1 out there. Now, it's just a neck plate. Anybody could forge a number 1, so maybe that's why they didn't bother. But I really don't think they were expecting this to be as popular as it was. But take a look at these PRS strap buttons. They're just really wide. I'm not really sure how I feel about those. I'll have to try them on a strap. But what really makes this example special is the neck. I mean, there's certain angles where you don't see anything, but most angles when you're here in person, you see some beautiful figuring within this. So I think this is a extra special example. I don't regret it because you get beautiful flame and wood grain all within the same piece, and this neck is just so massive. And here's what that looks like at the 1st fret and then by the 12th. The weird scarf joint is kind of a turnoff though, but I'm sure there's a perfectly good and logical explanation for it, like maybe it makes it stronger there. Because I've learned with PRS guitars, there is a fanciful explanation for everything. But back here, I mean, these even look like Kluson style tuners back here, just with the different tips. The serial number on these guys are handwritten, so 200299094, likely meaning 2020, first 2 tells us February. Fully assembled with trem bar, we're looking at 7 pounds, 3.5 ounces. So let's go ahead, plug this thing in, and hear how it sounds. Now that we know all about the Silver Sky, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I hate to say it, but I think PRS has ruined Stratocasters for me forever. This is a really comfortable ride. I was surprised. Going into this, I really just thought it was kind of a Strat knockoff with a few comfort features and things to change it up. But for me, it is all about this neck profile. I have never felt a Stratocaster that has the same width, the nice roundedness on the edges of the fretboard, the nice chunky neck. And I know it doesn't really come through in the photos very well, but looking down while you're playing, you see it at that perfect flamed angle. I mean, this is just such a beautiful guitar. And the way that they've moved this comfort cut up a little bit, it works better for my body style. Because I normally have a guitar right here, and the comfort cut usually doesn't line up for me on regular Stratocasters. So just that little shift up, it's like, oh, okay, that is a very comfortable guitar. So that is a very small change that they did here, and that neck profile, I mean, that's all good. On top of that, I like this guitar because I'm a rare guitar collector. I like having the things that are desirable, and having this limited edition finish that goes from purple to blue, that's a big win in my book. But what are some downfalls of this thing? One thing is it likes to attract dust, and it kind of appears like this one right here in a line, and it makes you think you scuffed up your instrument. And sometimes you have to polish it off because for whatever reason it just completely sticks to the guitar. That's kind of annoying. And there's not a lot of opportunities to upgrade this guitar. It didn't really occur to me until I started editing the video is you are stuck with single coils in here unless you want to do additional routing. So that could be a slight downfall of this if you're looking to upgrade one of these to have like an HSS Stratocaster type guitar. Because that's the thing about these pickups, they're very mid-rangey. But that is one reason why I think I would stick with a regular Stratocaster, because it doesn't really quite have that Stratocaster sound to it. I mean, if you're trying to do John Mayer stuff, it's perfect for that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it necessarily replaces a Stratocaster. I mean, unless you put other Stratocaster type pickups in here, then maybe it'll do the job. But it's just an alternative to one. The 3-on-a-side headstock might take a while for some people to get used to, but, you know, coming from Gibson territory, I mean, I'm pretty well used to that, and I really enjoyed those tuners. And this thing stayed in tune like a champ, despite me doing a bunch of bending on it. I think you can attribute that to the locking tuners having properly stretched strings and straight string pull, so it's just kind of a super win in that case. So ultimately, yes, I would recommend checking one of these out. Maybe not the Nebula Finish, just because, you know, it's kind of getting crazy expensive, and I'm sure once there's fewer on the market, we'll see these creep back up to that $6,000-$7,000 price. I just think PRS really undervalued these things, but they were a great value brand new while they lasted. But yeah, good luck on the scalpers market. All right, let's go ahead and check this guy out under Blacklight. As far as the Blacklight test, nothing too crazy here. The finish doesn't glow, but your pick guard does, as well as the tremolo tip. Man, that's a really bright glowing in person that hurts to even look at. We'll take a look at our headstock. You get a little bit of the glow, as well as on the back of the neck. So let's go ahead and check out the gig bag and case real quick. If you purchase one of these brand new, it comes in a deluxe gig bag. It just says PRS right there. You get a nice little zippered pouch that you can put some picks and whatever else you need to take gig to gig. The zippers are very high quality. They don't feel like the type that are gonna, you know, miss their teeth and then you're gonna have to replace it. You've got a nice secondary backside handle right here, that's good. But the main handle right here actually has like metal reinforcements right there, so you don't have to worry about that breaking off. It's not super padded. I think that's something they could probably work on in the future, but it definitely works. It's not going to fall off on you. But inside here, you got about 1 inch of foam on all sides, so I mean it does the job, but there's no neck rest block or anything. And you've got nice bumpers on pretty much all the major corners, including on the headstock. But overall, I don't think it has a lot of protection as far as, you know, dinging up the neck right here. But where this bag really shines is the back. You've got 2 straps. So if you prefer the 1 strap setup, you can do that. Or if you prefer it backpack style, you can do that. But I love the cushioning on this. I feel like that would be comfortable, and it's a breathable material. And you've got some padding on the straps as well. Not quite as luscious and nice feeling, but a breathable material nonetheless. And it looks like you also have a compartment in here that you can put additional things if you need to. So if you're taking your guitar a bunch of places, you know, this might be good enough for you. But if this is more of a collectible piece that you need to store, you can upgrade to a hard shell case for $200 extra. That's what I did because I felt it would be worth it. But, you know, the PRS case, the case itself, is not branded PRS anywhere. Now, I wonder if that has something to do with not wanting to make yourself a target if you're traveling with this, because somebody sees PRS, normally those are worth quite a bit of money. But one thing I do want to commend PRS on is the fact that this is such a tight form-fit case. I mean, this literally does not move. I've seen some people complain, like if you replace these with Dunlop or Schallers, it doesn't actually fit anymore, so I guess keep that in mind. And the other thing about every single PRS case I have ever had is they're ridiculously heavy. So when you have this in here, it's probably close to 20-25 pounds, I would guess. And if you want a really tight-fitting case for your Fender Stratocaster, will your Strat fit in here? It's very tight. It's mainly this part that doesn't necessarily fit, but I'm sure over time that padding would wear down. But it does indeed fit in there, and it does close. So that's an option for you if you want an unbranded case that's a super form fit. Because that's the thing about most of these Fender cases nowadays, is they fit both Tellies and Stratocasters, so they've kind of loosened the fit a little bit. But inside here sleeps your case candy. You get a truss rod tool, as well as your adjustment setup wrenches, and just warranty paperwork. There's not actually a fancy COA for these or anything. Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed this Silver Sky review and demo. I had a great time with this thing, and the fact that it's the super limited edition finish, that just made it all the more fun for me. So thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.